And we're live. Welcome again to another week's episode of Adored Tech. I'm your host Donnie. With me, as always, is my co-host Alex. How you doing, Al?
How's everybody doing?
So today we're going to talk a bit about a few different topics. Of course, graphics cards are still going to be on the menu as always. We'll be talking about the recent controversy with Best Buy putting GPUs behind paywalls. A video, Moore's Law is Dead, recently put out about AMD. And then we'll be getting into the software piracy topic with some other recent controversy with LTT and the OCCT software, as well as a few other things that are more broader tech related. But I think everyone will be really interested in those talks. So before we get started on the topics, how you doing today, Al?
I'm doing all right. I hope everybody watching is going to have a very nice Valentine's Day, either with their significant others or not.
Oh yeah, it is Valentine's Day. Today was pretty crazy for us because my daughter wasn't feeling well, so we had to take her to the doctor, the urgent care actually. She's doing okay, by the way. She just was running a fever, and we were a little bit concerned, so we wanted to check that out. So that's why I felt like kind of rushed to get everything going because I didn't have as much time for prep work as usual, but that's all right. And yeah, the whole Valentine's Day I totally spaced on, and I think my wife did too. So I might have gotten by all right, guys. Well, and on that note, let's get into our first topic. So Video Cards is reporting that Best Buy is putting RTX 30 series graphics card purchases behind a paywall using their Total Tech membership program. Basically, the program is, I think it's about a $200 fee. I actually have that in my notes, but they have escaped me for a second. Sorry. Yeah, it's a $200 a year premium membership, which gives gives customers access to like 24-hour tech support, Apple Care Plus, and then also exclusive membership benefits, including like exclusive membership pricing. And that's where this comes in. Basically, if you want to buy an RTX 30 series card on Best Buy, both Founders Edition and add-in board partner cards, you're going to be having to use this service. As at least it seems that way for now. And the service doesn't really prevent scalping because you can still buy multiple cards as long as they're not the same model. Users on Reddit actually reported that they were able to buy up to like 7 cards at once. So this is basically, a scalper's wet dream because you can just cut to the front of the line at Best Buy, get cards at basically MSRP. Because remember, Best Buy is the exclusive reseller of Founders Edition cards in the US. And Founders Edition cards are largely the only cards that hit the MSRP when they're available. Obviously, they're not available very often, but when they are available at Best Buy. And just this entire move from Best Buy seems really slimy. Although it's a little bit interesting that people are talking about it now because they actually announced this, I think, back in October. But I'm guessing it was that they didn't really give a whole lot of details about the exclusive stuff. They did mention access to consoles and things like graphics cards. But now we can see that what they're really doing here is just essentially asking people to pay for the benefit of being able to buy a card at MSRP, which is really, really sad. So my question to you, Alex, is how could this possibly be beneficial to gamers?
I mean, it's not.
Yeah,
I mean, so like,
basically
look,
sums it up.
If you're willing to pay a bit of a premium for the right to buy a graphics card, you might as well go ahead and give a little bit of extra money and pay the premium to just pay a scalper in the first place, or pay the inflated prices that are available on like Newegg or something. I mean, you're probably going to, yes, save money if you say, I don't know, what a 3070 is like $500 on there, right?
If they have them, yeah, they're
If they have
$499
them.
for Founders Edition.
I mean, you can probably get a 3070 without having to do any extra legwork for about $900 now, maybe $1,000. So you're giving this $200, and you're still going to be fighting to get the card over the other people who are going to be scalping. The scalpers are basically just paying a fee to scalp at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, this would give you a better chance, but then at that point, once you already have this membership and you could still buy other cards, why wouldn't you buy other cards? Because you're already committed at this point.
I mean, the only reason why you'd get this membership, aside from maybe you care about the other benefits like Apple Care Plus, which, I mean, I guess on the face of it is not that bad since Apple Care Plus is kind of expensive.
It's like what, like $100 or something a year, something like that.
Yeah. So like, but from a standpoint of like being a gamer and just wanting to buy a graphics card, you definitely shouldn't be buying this, unless of course you're a scalper, and then $200 fee for a year is like totally worth it.
I mean, you're gonna make that back on the first card that you sell.
Although I have heard, and I'm not sure about this because I didn't dig too deep into it because I didn't try to sign up myself, but I have heard that you can sign up for the program and get the free trial and then cancel it. So there's that. Although then you have to actually know when their graphics card drops happen. But I think they even notify users ahead of time of that as well. So,
I mean, I don't know. There's probably some good, like there's probably some edge cases where people do well on this. You know, they might take a benefit of it, but this just seems like something that's going to get more scalpers involved. Maybe if you had like a limit on, I don't know, 4 or 5 graphics cards a year for this.
I mean, well,
maybe something like that.
Micro Center just straight up limits how many cards you can buy from them, right?
Mm-hmm.
The latest policy I have heard is that for NVIDIA cards, it is 1 per household per 30 days. And for AMD cards, it is 1 per household per day. I guess they just have better inventory of AMD, or they sit on the shelves longer. I don't know. But with you're allowed to in the same day buy both an AMD and an NVIDIA card. That might not be the store policy for every store. I believe that was the store policy for the Chicago store. The problem is not every store posts their policy where it's easy to find. But I'd imagine it's similar.
I just want to answer this question really quickly from Nicodemus. We're going to answer more of them as time goes on. And if you do want your questions to be answered immediately, super chats really help that. But he said with the paywall, even after the fee, it is still just is it just as lottery like as the Newegg Shuffle is? Is this a lucky number ordeal? No, it's not.
As far as I can
tell, it's sort of a first come first serve thing where the drop happens. I've tried to buy a card from there a bunch of times. I spent maybe like 2 months trying to buy the card.
Given that, yeah, if it was a lottery thing where it's like they give you the ability to buy one card, then if you win the lottery, you pick which one you want to buy. That'd be one thing, but that's not the case because people were able to buy 7 different models at once. And actually, we've just had a friendly drop in.
I was gonna say, yeah, it looks like we got somebody in the bullpen.
How's it going, guys?
How you doing?
Pretty good.
Maybe I should try the. All right, guys, how's it going?
No, I liked the first one where you sounded vaguely Canadian.
How's it going? Eh? I don't know. I'm not even gonna try.
So yeah, I mean, we were just talking about the Best Buy Total Tech thing where it's kind of like a GPU paywall.
Right. And I don't know why it's such a sensational thing. Maybe it's just because it finally went live or something, because they announced it last year, guys.
Yeah, I was talking about that. They did announce it back in October, but I don't think people fully understood what it is they were announcing because they didn't give a lot of details.
Right. And they said that you would get exclusive access to some of the harder to get things. They were mainly centering around the PS5 at the time, but it also included the 30 series GPUs, which were obviously being snapped up by scalpers. And so people saw it as an opportunity to get that. But they once again were complaining about it being behind a paywall because they knew it was going to be a subscription service. And they had just renamed their Total Tech service with a space to Total Tech without a space. And so this was in the transition.
That was a
in the
huge
creation of this
branding
new
change.
service that's the same as the old service, just
right.
They just have to print a whole bunch of more. They have to print a whole lot more logos and stuff.
Chris Young said, "This is Jim." No, my friend, this is Kirk. You might recognize him from some of his videos he's done on the channel that focus mostly around networking and like NAS-based stuff.
And we got the Wi-Fi bridge in there too. So
yeah, really cool videos.
Somewhat exotic tech.
I mean, if you guys want, though, you could pretend that he's Jim if that makes you guys feel better.
Right. No, I got to do this kind of a thing, right?
Yeah. Kirk does the stuff that we don't have the technical know-how to do in terms of networking and enterprise sort of work and applications. Alex does the consumer reviews, and I don't do anything except for host this show.
I do a lot of typing and a lot of pressing the buttons on the benchmarks.
You do a lot of the graphic stuff, like the logos and things like that. So if you want to give him a round of applause for the adored logo.
I have not made a thumbnail. I made one, and he really did not like it.
Yes, I make all the thumbnails now, except for I don't make Kirk's thumbnails because he's good at them.
I'm passable. I'm sure a lot of people don't think they're that great.
No, but speaking of round of applause, if you want to show us some support, you could check us out on Patreon at patreon.com/adoredtech. That is the specific Patreon for the podcast and the website. So that helps us out on both fronts there. So, check us out if you want to throw us a few bucks. Now, let's get into another topic. We have Moore's Law is Dead did a video recently. That is basically, it is about AMD faking day one pricing. That he's alleging that they essentially pay AIBs to have lower prices on a large enough quantity of allocation of graphics cards so that they're able to hit the marketed MSRP on launch day. And then following that, the prices will just go up, sometimes drastically. They point to an example of the RX 6500 XT, which was a $200 card, but then after launch, pretty much floated back up to past 250, around 260, 270 is where you can buy it at regularly. Obviously, these are all allegations on his part. He does have sources that he doesn't name, but that he says he believes are credible. I guess for my part, I would ask, is this really surprising to anyone? Like, I know this sounds really shady, but like this is essentially just a manufacturer rebate that they're applying here, and it's not something that's new.
Right. It's not something that hasn't been done before. But the thing that I see is, why would they do it other than to make everyone happy that they came out with a card at MSRP, which is something that hasn't happened since the 30 series came out, and even then those prices were only available for 3 seconds.
Right. So they allege that, they use the 6500 XT as an example. They allege that this has happened with pretty much every 6000 series launch so far, where there's been cards available at MSRP on launch day, but then following that, they go up by, 20, 30, 40, 50%. The thing is what they're basically saying is AMD is doing this so they can get more favorable reviews because the MSRP is X, even though it's really Y. On launch day, the only price that a reviewer has is the MSRP that's quoted to them, because they don't get to see the pricing happen in the market until after the review is done. I mean, a lot of good reviewers try to adjust for this anyway, but some don't. So
with written, this is a lot easier to do after the fact. With the video, not so much.
Right. And the thing I've seen is them try to attribute in the video saying it's not going to be that on launch day. It's not going to be that for months after launch day. Look at what the performance is versus the price for the time you're watching the video or reading the article. A lot of times in the article, they actually spell out in there as well, this price, I'm not even going to do any graphs based on price because it's just a non-existent thing. MSRP has been a ludicrous thing for the past year and a half.
I mean, people always ask for the price to performance graphs, but the problem is with price being as I guess changing as much as it does, it's kind of a waste of time and energy when you're doing stuff like this. Like even one of the videos I did on the I think it was the i5 the 11400. A lot of people did a bunch of data with the 11400F, but the 11400F jumped in price like $20 a week later. So at that point, is it actually the king of value when you have to change this stuff? And then you have to do the math anyways, which if you're doing the math anyways, you kind of could have made the graph yourself.
Well, and sales change from a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. You know, something might go on $20 off on Newegg and not Amazon or vice versa. And I've seen prices that are phenomenally better on a platform versus another, depending on what week I was looking at shopping. And I usually have a primary and a runner-up in my mind on what I want to buy. That way, you know, say I can't get the specific NVMe SSD, there's one that is of similar performance or reputation that usually floats around the same price. I just see which one's on sale and get that.
If you can't say get the Samsung one because you know you have credit at Best Buy or Newegg or whatever, and you see the Western Digital one is there too, you end up picking that one instead. I understand what you mean.
Yeah, believe it or not, I haven't bought a Samsung NVMe SSD for the last 4 purchases. It just hasn't been in the deck for the price and performance.
I mean, this is not to go off on a tangent, but just really quickly, generally the Samsung stuff is really not worth the premium that you pay for it anymore. Especially if you're not going to keep the drive for a really long time.
Yeah, I have seen probably the best thing you can attribute to the Samsung drives is performance. For one, they usually are fairly good in the performance range, unless if you particularly get some of their really low-end performing ones. But the other thing that they have done really well for at least me is their stability. They don't just die like some of the Intel SSDs that I've used, or anyone remember OCZ back in the day? Those SandForce controllers failed on me a lot. And the Intel ones have been doing something similar to me, where they just lock up the SATA ports or whatever on the motherboard, and all of the storage communications just lock up and freeze. And it's intermittent. It's kind of acts like a slow hard drive when it's starting to happen, which tells me I need to get off that disk as soon as possible. And we saw that with pretty much every Intel SSD we had in our production use where I worked. So
speaking of SSDs, I didn't prepare this topic because I kind of forgot about it, to be honest with you. But this reminds me that Western Digital reported that they lost 6.5 million terabytes of NAND flash storage due to contamination, which many people are speculating is going to cause an increase in in SSD prices. I haven't actually noticed one yet. You could still get a 512 gig NVMe drive for around $50 to $60 right now, but it does seem like
a year and a half ago that we had another contamination. Was it with TSMC? I forget. Where they lost, like, what was it, 30,000 wafers due to contamination.
We just got a super chat here from Denver A1G1. I think reviewers should put I feel it should sell for this price range. Don't review at MSRP and adjust for changes later. If the MSRP is high or low, say it in the review.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
definitely disclose.
So this might not be exactly what you're getting at, Denver or Denvera. I don't know what's your preferred pronoun. No, but Hardware Unboxed does something similar to that, where they'll quote you the MSRP and tell you how it how it fares at that MSRP, but then also tell you where they expect it to land in terms of real world pricing and tell you how it's doing at that price too. And I think that's a good approach. It takes some extra work. It takes knowledge of the market and how these things might naturally play out. But it's worth doing if you really want to provide useful information to the viewer rather than just, simple scores.
Right. And I hope that a lot or all of the reviewers out there are honestly trying to provide you with the most information out of their review possible. Everything they can honestly say without exaggerating or making stuff up. And when they start bringing in, oh, I think this should be at this price, they, like you said, Hardware Unboxed, it tries to say, well, this GPU performs similar and it's priced at this point, and it's between these two, so it should be about here in the price. It's a great way to do it. It's a good way to compensate for MSRP being, what it is, non-existent. And well,
I have to pull the video that I did for the 6600 XT, the one that I used your data on, Donnie. But I think I remember saying something like, we should have some stock of these cards in at, close to MSRP. But if you're looking at this card at like $500, it's not bad, which these cards end up sitting at like $550 now, $500. You can buy them pretty easily. So, I mean, it is important for us to try to bridge the gap between what we think real prices will be on the street, which is kind of just a guesstimate too, because, there's a lot of factors that people aren't going to come up to. Like, Kirk, I don't think any of us would have thought that 3070s at launch would end up being $1,000 3 months later. I don't think anybody would have came up with that conclusion.
I know. I knew that they would sell out because the 20 series sold out. It's just a thing. It happens. But yeah, I'm probably with everyone else that thought it would happen very similar to what the 20 series did, or even the 10 series, where it sold out and then it became available within a few months, and it was at normal prices with a few sales and things like that. And it would do the standard trend we've always seen, even if it was at a slightly different price point. The 20 series decided to reset that for everyone by jacking it up there. And so when the 30 series came out, better performance, different architecture a little bit, and had a slightly lower price than what the 20 series was MSRP'd at, everyone's like, whoa, this is a great deal, and they jumped on board. But at this point, mining was a thing, and it made a resurgence, and the 30 series was a great mining GPU. And they saw 120-day returns on those GPUs, which instantly means they're going to be gone. It takes till about 200 to 260 days of payback in order for the cards to start tapering off on demand. And once it exceeds 300, 360, I would hope that nobody is purchasing those cards at that point, because the crypto market is so in flux that it may not even pay off by the time you're done mining on it. But here's the kicker. It's a general purpose GPU. They could go mine on it for 3 months, not really make much off of it, maybe a quarter of the price of the card, and then go and sell it used, but still fairly new, still under a warranty period, whatever. I mean, transferable, who knows?
Kirk, there's a lot of
get rid of it.
There's a lot of people who have bought 3070s last year, mined on them, and then sold them probably sometime. If you would have bought your GPU in last year and you sold it around Christmas time and you got about $1,100 for your 3070, you got a free graphics card. You know, you just paid for power.
Right.
Probably
and
paid
you
less on the card
mined
too,
and made enough to cover that power and then some. I mean, I picked up a 3070 non-TI because it was from the EVGA Lotto, right? I got that at MSRP, by the way. And it's paid for itself. It's right now chugging away at about $4 a day.
Steve just said he did that with his 3070 he got for MSRP. He got $1,300 for it and paid $559.
Yeah, and that's why scalpers are raking it in right now.
Yeah, pretty much.
And
you have
yes,
people
you're
like
correct. Miners shouldn't be buying new cards with less than a year before the next generation. That's assuming it launches on time, of course. But we don't know what type of performance leap it's going to provide. Maybe it's another 5, 10, 20% mining performance, but better gaming performance, because that's right now kind of what the bottleneck is. There's a lot more CUDA cores that aren't able to translate into actual performance compared to the CUDA cores of yesteryear because of how they split them out and re-architected the GPU.
So just in case you guys aren't watching this live and you might be listening, Denver asked a question saying miners shouldn't be buying new cards with less than a year before the next generation, but they're probably going to be holding the cards. So that was in response. Usually we like to read out our questions, Kirk, just in case people are listening.
Yeah, I was using it as a talking prompt more than a actual question, since it was a
Fair
statement.
I mean, to be fair, he literally stated the question in the answer, which is always a fun trick.
Well, we know that the next gen of cards aren't going to be available at launch anyway because of scalpers and whatnot. So yes, they're going to hold on to their cards because they're not going to be able to get the new ones either. They're going to get what they can and then probably start cycling out their old ones as the new ones get put into their farm.
And I honestly think that despite what a lot of us are hoping, the really limited sale availability at launch on the next gen cards will lead to insane scalp prices because, you know, there's going to be people who just want it. And they already paid, you know, $2,000 for a 3080. So if they're going to, they might do that for a 4080. They might give $3,000 for a 4080 because they just want it now.
Let's hope it doesn't come to that. But
I really hope so too. But you know,
hey, I'm hoping for a 40 series card. Come on.
I don't know, man. RDNA 3 sounds really good. I might have to make a new shirt. And I literally just made a new shirt, so that's
right.
Man, some people are winning.
Speaking of shirts, if you one way to support us is check out our merch store at merch.adored.tech. We have some cool new shirts on. I wish I could show you them on stream. I actually ordered some samples myself, and I'm still waiting for them to come in because shipping is a nightmare. But hopefully next week you guys will be able to check those out.
Hopefully next week you guys will not see me using a Christmas cup, but an Adored TV mug.
Yeah.
Maybe now, you guys can buy that mug too.
Moving on to our next topic. This one is a little bit of
stuff.
This topic is a little bit centered around some drama in the tech tuber sphere, but it brings up an interesting conversation, so I figured we'd cover it anyway. Let me share my screen. Screen share. Let's see. There we go. So Linus Tech Tips was accused by users on Reddit of pirating the software OCCT. Okay, and I literally just lost the screen share. I'm doing really well today. Add stream. There we go. Sorry, one misclick and you just lose everything. So basically, they use the software on camera to showcase its features. OCCT is an overclock stability testing software, which is free to use for personal use. However, it requires a paid license for commercial usage. Apparently, Linus Tech Tips didn't pay for this license because, well, we'll get into that in a second. But the developer did respond to this on Reddit, and essentially they felt aggrieved about it because, but didn't really feel like they wanted to make a fuss about it because they were worried that, when you go after a big YouTuber, they can, be the end of your company when you're a small developer that, you're making a piece of software by yourself, which is fair. The issue I have with that, though, is, and I'll bring up Linus's response. Well, here was the tweet. He mentioned that the developer did actually respond to them on Twitter after he noticed the first time they used it in a video, saying, "Thanks for using OCCT in your videos. Your version is pretty old, though. My app got much, much better since then. Give it a shot." And so I suppose they took that as an open invitation to continue using the software on camera. And so they have. Linus's response, though, was that he has since paid for the software, a commercial license, but that he basically didn't realize that this was going to be a problem. He didn't know he had to pay for a license because in his, I guess, perspective, commercial usage would be like a system integrator or an OEM or something that is pre-overclocking their systems, using the software to stability test that, and then sell systems. Whereas they don't actually use the software at LTT themselves. They've only used it in videos to showcase the software. And that's, in their mind, something more educational usage, and also it's promotion for the software, which the developer does acknowledge. Them showcasing the software does have an uptick in traffic to his website and downloads. And he did say that if they reached out to him, he would have given a free license anyway. It does sound like this whole thing kind of blew up because Redditors decided to make it a thing, and it wasn't really either party really having a problem to begin with. But the reason why I think this is interesting is because it brings up a conversation about paid software and its usage in things like videos and reviews and such. Nintendo had a similar issue with people, streaming their games
in general.
Yeah. And so at what point does it become commercial usage in the sense that, yes, Linus Tech Tips is making money on the video that they showcase your product in, but they're not using it in the intended way you meant for that commercial license to apply. They obviously meant for it to apply to actually using the software commercially to make money with the usage of the software. And not essentially advertising the software without charging you.
So like a boutique PC maker like Origin using it to stability test their systems or something like that?
Yes.
Well,
and that brings up an interesting question. If I download the software to stability test the system that I plan on, selling, I'm not a system integrator by any means, but I might sell a system on Craigslist every now and then. Do I have to give $300 to them in order to be not pirating the software, even though the software is free for general consumer use?
Then at that point, you just don't use that software. Like that's just kind of what they're going to initiate by doing that.
Well, commercial use is technically anything that you use their software and make money. Like you can have like a free for personal use video editing software, and you're using it for your personal YouTube channel, and then you monetize all the videos that you're making with that software. Are you now doing it commercially? Yes, you are. So if Linus makes a video specifically about OCCT that requires a commercial license to use commercially with the sole intent of spreading the good word, promoting his channel, and monetizing his video, that's using it for commercial purposes, and it should be licensed.
Well, the issue with this is, I don't know how many times you guys have gotten in your emails companies throwing software at us to use for our own benchmarking purposes.
Right. And that's the thing. It's just two ships in the night
also,
kind of situation.
This is really,
honest mistake.
This is one guy. This is the important thing. This is one guy who does not have a marketing team. This is very likely something he would be very happy to send to Linus to have that exposure.
Right.
I really don't think that it's worth to him. If I were this dev, I would not think it's worth the $300 license to risk not having that attention to my product.
Well, again, he did say he would have gladly given them a license for free.
That's what I mean.
He didn't have a problem with the usage, but it's more centered around the argument of commercial licensing in general.
Well, so in my view, though, if that particular, like if that's how you apply commercial licensing for software, using it in a video where the video is monetized, then Nintendo definitely has the ability to lawfully require you to pay a license in order to showcase their games, even though that is beneficial to them. And so, like, every person,
there's a reason they've been successful in shutting people down.
So every person then who is on, because I just find it interesting, because I've seen a lot of Redditors who were definitely on against Nintendo in that choice, to do that, who were also mad at Linus for doing this. And frankly, I don't think you could be on both sides of that issue. Like, I think you have to be consistent. If you believe the laws shouldn't be that applied that way, then
I mean, a lot of this just comes down to friend-enemy distinction. This guy's a small-time dev. Nintendo's a giant company. Linus is the aggressor because he makes money, and the Twitch streamer who gets harassed by Nintendo for streaming their game is the little guy. That's a lot of what this comes down to, is the public perception of who the bigger person is, quote unquote.
Also, I'd like to point out, though, the main reason why Reddit decided to make this an issue now is because Linus recently likened watching videos on YouTube with ad blocker to software piracy. Because you're not paying for, because by not watching the ad, you're not paying for the price for the content that you're consuming. Now, he didn't say it should be a crime in the same way. He was saying it is morally the same thing. Mm-hmm. Which I guess I agree with. It is like, if the video is monetized via ads and you are blocking those ads by some subversion, you are consuming the content without paying for it. I mean, we all use ad blocker in some form or another, but that's just the reality of the situation.
We can all put a black bar at the bottom of our screen with a piece of paper so it covers the bottom pop-up ads too. I mean, there's physical ways to get around ads as well. You fast forward through them on your DVR, whatever. I mean, I'm not thinking it's the exact same.
Well, the difference is there is whether you fast forward over the ad or not. That's the thing I kept seeing on Twitter, people getting angry. Whether or not you walk out of your kitchen to grab a drink while commercials are on, that does not stop NBC from making money off of the Glad, kitchen cleaner ad. They still make that money regardless or not. If you turn on ad block, then that creator does not make the money from that ad because it's not being served. So
right. It's not being fetched, and there's metrics in order to see that nobody actually watched it. Whereas with TV, it could be playing to an empty room, and the only thing they see is that somebody had that channel tuned during that period of time.
I mean, and even with YouTube, though, if you skip the ad using the button, they still pay the content provider for the ad being served.
The impression.
Yeah.
Right. Not as much as if they had clicked on the ad.
And if you physically, obviously, if you physically look away from the ad, they still get, they still get paid for it. But
there's not for long. They're doing eye tracking with VR, so just wait. That's the big thing. Welcome to Big Brother, guys. Telemetry. It is all about telemetry and better monetization of ad space. We moved from this broadcast television where you just picked a time slot that had good ratings and hoped for the best. And now you can count how many people actually watch your ad and pay per impression, things like that. And it's just going to get better and better as far as the advertisers are concerned, not so much for us, because we're going to have to come up with more and more ways to sidestep having to watch these stupid ads that just block our view and force us to watch 40 seconds or whatever of some garbage ad 16 times if you're on Hulu, and before you can continue watching your content.
Yeah, not to interrupt you, but we got a comment from Twitch, which is a new channel for us. So,
Okay.
but GA Beathouse 99 asked, "Is this live?" And I just wanted to say, yes, it is
yes.
live. You're not dreaming. You're not...
Mike also mentioned something in the chat. Mike Brazone. He says that he actually disagrees with me. He says the question, I think, is what is a seat license? And I might disagree with Kirk. However, it's a unique way to monetize use. This goes back to monetizing by displaying the application and things like that. And yes, it is unique. I would say it's no different than, say, go buying a toy from Walmart, taking it to your YouTube channel and showing it how it's played with or whatever on your YouTube. I have kids. What can I say? That's my go-to argument, right? So showing how to play with a toy that you purchased from Walmart. You didn't go and steal it from Walmart, or you didn't go buy it and then return it to Walmart when you were done for a full refund. You bought it to show on your screen and show how it's used. That's just my takeaway on that. But moving to the seat license question, per seat licensing, I've had to deal with this in enterprise a lot. Per seat licensing is number of installs or number of concurrent users is how it's kind of going nowadays. So if I'm using a license on my computer, but it's able to be shared because you have a server that tracks usage and things like that. And say I had 2 seat licenses, me and my wife could both be using it at the same time. If I only had a 1 seat license, I could be using it. When I'm done, then my wife can start using it. But if she tries to use it while I'm using it, it'll say that the license is already taken and you have to free it up by closing the program before they can use it. That's generally what a seat license is, one butt in a seat using it.
So I just had my own personal thoughts on this. I don't use ad block for YouTube. I have pirated stuff in the past. I think pretty much everybody listening here has done something along those lines at some point in their lives if they're a millennial. But
yeah, I mean, the main reason I don't pirate anymore is mostly because it's not as convenient as just buying the thing. I mean, honestly, and I don't have that much time to be playing everything or using everything or whatever, you know.
When I was a broke teenager, like this was totally.
Say, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you're in high school or junior high and you don't have a job or you don't have a lot of money to buy $60 games, you go and you pirate it, you play it, you really like it, and so you want the online features, you go buy it, maybe for a birthday or whatever, or you move on to the next game after 20 seconds of playing it and you're like, yeah, this sucks, and you go to the next pirated game. But once you have gone through college or whatever and you're starting to have a career, you're making some money, it's easy to drop money on $10 Steam sales. You start going for the cheaper games, maybe with a one or off or a couple of these $60 games. But eventually your Steam library fills up with games that you may or may not have bought at full price, and you have the money for it now.
That you don't play.
I mean, you got these people dropping $2,000 on GPUs because they just want the best for when they do play games, but they have a job, they can afford it. That's fine. You know, those that don't, well, they kind of are further back on that evolutionary scale of pirating to then paying full price.
It's almost like as you get older, you have more actual income, and less time. So
yes, and so
you pay for the
you
things
end
you
up
use
just buying the game instead of pirating it. You play it for the same 20 seconds, 30 minutes, whatever. And then you're like, oh, I got to go to bed so I can go to work in the morning. Darn career.
So yeah, I mean, there's people in our Patreon Discord that have told us that they just straight up don't look at the ads. They have an ad blocker or whatever. They use our website with an ad blocker or whatever, but they donate every month to the website, or they donate to us. I don't really care.
And that's kind of the way things are starting to head. If you've noticed with all this upsurge of paywalls, they know people have ad blockers and they still need revenue. So they put stuff behind paywalls.
I've seen people respond to Linus Tech Tips saying, well, ads are annoying. I don't want to have to see them. It's like, okay, that's fair enough. But that doesn't change the fact that ads are one of the ways that these content creators monetize and are able to create the content, right? And if you don't want to watch the ads, or at least let them run in some form or another, there's other methods of supporting content creators. Not, there is Patreon, but there's also YouTube Premium, which, I mean, for $10 a month, you can have no ads and support every content creator you watch, because they get paid as much, if not more, for a YouTube Premium view than they do for a free ad spot view. I mean,
well, and there's other ways to get ad revenue as well, and a lot of YouTubers have actually been making more with this way rather than just YouTube ads, and that is sponsored content, basically.
Right. Well,
and how many times have you seen Manscaped or a Dollar Shave Club in an actual video where it's like, and let me tell you for a moment how I keep my hair clean,
Yeah, and that is definitely
30 seconds, you move on. The whole video is now covered by $400 or $500. I don't know.
Like, yeah, I mean, there's I personally have had some YouTubers that I followed, and I saw that they were streaming on Twitch. I've never watched their Twitch, but I saw they were streaming one day, and I dropped like $10 in there, and I said, I've been watching your stuff for years. Here's $10 for all the stuff that you did.
So
yeah, which is why Denvera's contribution of $10 is much appreciated.
Very much so. Thank you very much.
And I did want to say one thing real quick about something he mentioned. He says, I've had to pirate 2 games because they wouldn't activate. And most EA games pre-Bad Company 2 because activation servers got taken down. Yeah, when a game no longer even has servers, you remember GameSpy, right? When the servers no longer exist, so you can't even play or activate it anymore. Yeah, pirate the crap out of it. Yeah, but the other thing is when the DRM stuff hobbles the game so bad that you can't even play it at least above 30 frames per second, then it almost becomes something you have to do, even if you bought it legitimately, just to have a good experience in it. And it's sad, but yeah.
I have a friend of mine who bought Skyrim on 2 different consoles, and he just said, he's like, I'm just going to pirate it on PC. I don't care. I'm not going to buy this game again. I'm not going to buy the same game 4 times. And it's like, well, I guess that's fine. That's a whole.
Bought it on one platform, but the license
that's not legal.
For that game, when you buy the game, you buy it a license to play it on a particular platform. And so you bought it for PS5. Yeah, great. You can't play it on Xbox or the PC. If you bought it for Xbox, there are some games that are nice enough to allow you to play it on Xbox Live between the PC and the Xbox, because they're essentially Windows boxes, right? So Microsoft has a little corner of the market there, but that's not always the case. And
there are games I've bought. There are games I've bought more times than I'm willing to admit. Resident Evil 4 is one of them, and the VR version came out for the Oculus Quest, and I almost thought about buying it again, but I didn't. I didn't, guys. I'm doing better.
This is what GeForce Now and Stadia was kind of addressing. You would buy it on the platform, and you could play it on your phone, on your desktop, on your console. It didn't matter. You would be able to play it whatever suited your fancy.
We got a YouTube Premium.
Yeah, YouTube Red.
Yeah,
great stuff, and it's fairly cheap too.
His comment says, I use YouTube Premium and I love it. Joe, I'm sorry, I'm not going to try to pronounce your last name, but I appreciate the $5. Thanks for the support.
We also got one comment over here from Brian Allen, said that he runs with GOG and some codecs downloads. He's backed so many games on his NAS, this way you don't need the internet or the Steam app. I mean, look, again, if you want to use this stuff to like circumvent weird online checks or whatever, I don't think the FBI should kick your door down or anything.
So first of all, I'm not judging anyone who pirates big games to play them. Like whatever, that's not my business. But if you bought the game and you still use the cracked launcher or whatever because you don't want to deal with DRM, whatever, man, that's your business. Like you still paid for the license on the platform you're using it on. That's
right.
Whatever.
So there's a hot take here from Adam in Charge. If you're too poor and financially irresponsible to afford games, I think financially irresponsible is a little rough there, but then don't play games. Pirating is for children. Let's just be real here. Now, that's exactly what we were saying, by the way.
That is the very mean and rude way to say what we already said.
Yeah. When you're younger and you don't have money, or you're too poor in this case, pirating is kind of the name of the game. And financially irresponsible is kind of hard because
sometimes piracy is the only real avenue to be able to access the game or software or movie or whatever too, because maybe you live in a country where that movie is not on any of the streaming platforms that you have access to. What are you going to do?
It's rated M for mature, and so it's not allowed in Australia or Europe or something.
That's why I like Mustafa. Okay, sorry. That's why I like GOG, and I have bought loads of games on GOG. GOG is pretty cool.
They've done very well.
The free nature of GOG is really, really sweet.
Well, and they've done well at keeping older games still able to play on modern platforms. And so that's 100% a good reason to buy stuff from there. But they also do it DRM free, which is great.
I mean, look, I just feel like there's a certain point where it's not worth the time and energy for me to try to go ahead and mess around with cracks or download a game 6 times, where I'd rather just, for a lot of games, they're like $10, $15. Just pay the $10, $15 and go on with your day.
There's a lot of games that I've bought over the years with the intent to play them, and I never have, but they were cheap enough, so it was like, whatever. My Steam library is filled with things that were never played. I think that's probably the case for most people at this point who PC game, but it's a little depressing almost, because like if I bought a game on sale because it was a good price, but I never played it, it was a really bad price actually.
Because you didn't use it.
Yeah. But whatever. I guess even if I didn't play it, it was still a good game. It helped the developer out.
Nicodemus Stroud's like, isn't emulation considered piracy? At least for recent ROMs? It's piracy even for older ROMs. Abandonware is a whole nother topic, by the way. But
so emulation
at that point,
this one's interesting because emulation is absolutely considered piracy, but it's not the act of the emulation, because that's just software conjiggering running code, right? It is the downloading of the ROMs that is definitely piracy. Now,
even if you have it on your own cartridges, downloading it to your PC for backup purposes and then playing it on your PC no longer is playing it on the platform you bought the license for. Congratulations, you're pirating.
That is true. So although I will say, while it might meet the legal definition and it might break the developer or content creators original wishes with the content, I think morally you're probably in the clear, because you bought the thing and you're just playing it. You're just not using
emulation is not piracy.
50-year-old box.
It's emulating pirated content that's piracy. You can make your own Nintendo game using Nintendo code to run in SNES or whatever emulator, and that's not piracy, but you're still emulating. So let's make sure we have our definitions defined here very well. Emulation is not piracy.
Hold on, wait.
Playing
I'm going
pirated
too
games
fast. Sorry.
is piracy.
Adam in charge. Also, thanks for the couple bucks while you're trolling us. Emulation is piracy and illegal, morally wrong. Sure, man. Do whatever you want to do.
I mean, go kick people's doors down that are pirating Super Nintendo.
No. Actually, that is definitely illegal because that would be vigilantism and breaking and entering.
This is the comment that I liked from Bazood, Albert, one of our staff.
One of our staff writers, yeah. I know a guy who has a 12700K and an RTX 3090 and pirates almost every game he plays. Well, he saves a lot of money on the piracy, so he can buy that
afford
really
those
expensive graphics
scalper
card.
prices. If I had a 3090, it'd be mining. I wouldn't have time to play on it.
The other problem with game piracy for me, though, is just that most of the games I play are multiplayer. So there's no,
I was about to say you can't pirate World of Warcraft, but
I have recently, though, played Pokemon Legends Arceus in the Yuzu emulator for complete academic purposes only, just to document the performance of the emulator and how well it runs on systems, and that's all.
Which is fair use. Remember,
I didn't catch every Pokemon I seen and enjoyed the story and the gameplay or anything.
That's fair use. This is for research purposes only.
Yeah,
Brian makes a good point.
I might actually do that in a future video where I document emulation performance on different CPUs.
Well, that's what Brian Talon is saying is, Nintendo is pissed because there's a new EMU that runs Switch games better than the Switch using smartphones with Snapdragon SoCs. Yeah, wait, it happens.
Which emulator runs on smartphones for the Switch? Because Yuzu and Ryujinx are both good emulators, but I haven't seen anybody use them on Snapdragon processors yet. In a playable way, at least. If they can, that's really cool, actually.
We have one more comment, which is this is illegal. You're stealing Nintendo's intellectual property. No, it's academic. This is considered under fair use. You can totally do this. There's legal precedent.
Does Japan have intellectual property laws? I don't know. I don't pay attention to other countries.
For the emulation, yes. Not the emulation laws. I'm saying, you can emulate under fair use. Like I said, playing the ROMs that were pirated, those are the point where it becomes
for a second, I almost thought Kirk was taking the bait that I set out there about Japan. That was for the chat. That wasn't meant for you guys.
I was pulling over to Alex on that one.
I guess what's the next topic though before we get in too much trouble?
And no, Adam, you're misinterpreting what we're saying. It is.
Is he though? Maybe we're all illegal.
So it's academic to steal and play games for free. No, that's not academic use.
I was obviously joking. But then again, that you're just trolling us and we're letting you do it because it's fun. Let's see. So
speaking of monkeys.
Yeah, speaking of monkeys.
Trolling no is serious. That's the thing. I don't know sometimes.
At this point, who knows? So apparently it's being reported that 15 of the 23 monkeys that were used for testing Elon Musk's Neuralink brain chips have reportedly died. Basically, out of the total of 23 monkeys implanted with Elon Musk's Neuralink brain chips at the University of California, Davis, between 2017 and 2020, at least 15 reportedly died. News comes from the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine and animal rights groups that viewed over 700 pages of documents, veterinary records, and necropsy reports through a public records request at the university. If you guys don't know what Neuralink is, it is essentially a chip that Elon Musk's company is working on that will be implanted directly into your brain that will be able to interface between your brain and your body, bypassing the spinal cord link that is required. So the main purpose is for medical uses for people who have certain injuries that prevent them from being able to move their bodies and are basically paralyzed. But the other highlighted uses they're talking about is more consumer use, which is like being able to interface with the internet and like smartphones or what have you directly with your brain.
Before on the Joe Rogan podcast, right?
Yes,
he was saying something along the lines of, this is really like a huge bottleneck with people and computers is the interface and the fact that mice and keyboard just do not interact quickly enough, as
or a touch screen or whatever it is, whatever.
A touch screen phone is worse than a mouse and keyboard, let me tell you.
And what you need to do in order to get us working more efficiently, quote unquote, is to sort of bypass the physical body, like hands.
Jack into the matrix.
Literally just use
Sort Out Online, pull up Nerve Gear. Yeah. It's been thoroughly examined in a lot of sci-fi.
Yes, it has. So I guess my question for this one is, are we going too far? Should we really be? I mean, I understand the medical benefits of something like this, but obviously, from what Elon is saying, that's not really the end game here. It's really much more about the general broad consumer usage of this for everything you do in computing.
Right. And there's a whole lot of things technologically that this opens up. It's not just moving a robotic arm with your mind because you are a paraplegic. That's the heartthrob story kind of thing, right? Oh, I feel bad for this paraplegic. He can't move his legs, or quadriplegic because he can't move his arms or legs. Let's give him a way to interact with the world and be self-sustaining and able to enjoy life to a fuller extent. Yeah, that's what sells the idea. The benefits, there's a whole lot more. We talked about Matrix real quick, where you can be in a virtual world and interact with things virtually without having to physically be there. It enables a lot of asterisks right there. With just thought. You don't have to worry about touching mouse keyboard, and you can interact faster. Ghost in the Shell kind of fast, where you actually have direct uplinks to the internet and you can use your brain to hack other people. Fun times.
The anime, not the Scarlett Johansson movie.
Imagine having a firewall in your lower brain stem.
Oh man, could you imagine ransomware with something like a Neuralink?
Yeah, all of a sudden your brain just gets encrypted. You start.
So that's the absolute, like, the security implications of here. Like, it's one thing if the only thing this thing links with is like a prosthetic or something like that. But if this thing is connected to the internet in some way because you're able to interface with other forms of computing and the cloud or whatever, then that means that somebody can hack into it. And if somebody can hack into your brain, literally, that's not a future we need, guys.
Let's put it this way. It will start with cloud uplink. They make pacemakers with cloud built in. It's just the way medicine and medical equipment is going. The doctors need real-time feedback to their analytics software, whatever, so that they know that they need to do this, that, or the other with you for your next appointment, or even tonight, because your stats are varying beyond norm and they need to respond immediately. That's kind of the benefit of having the IoT stuff. That real-time feedback from cloud AI, ML, whatever you want to call it, to make things better for you.
Albert asked, have you played Cyberpunk 2077, Donnie? Yes. And that is exactly, like, that's a warning.
But I can get so much work done faster than before. Yeah, okay. That's... I don't want
to. Also, what is the term I'm looking for when you hack into a bunch of systems and use them as like a farm
botnet?
for like a botnet or something like that, right?
A farm for what?
For
depending
any
on what
sort
you
of
say,
computing.
it changes the term.
Yeah, well, no, I mean use them as like for computing, like doing a mass compute workload or DDoS or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
that sort of attack, but
the
it's
ion cannon idea kind of stuff, a DDoS, yeah.
Like China
A
hacked
swarm, a botnet, yeah.
citizens Neuralinks and uses it to like for guerrilla insurgency or something. Like that's just. Also, you're mining Bitcoin with your brain. Obviously, that's the first thing we're gonna do. Adam in charge says, "Oh, so you don't like when foreign entities interact with and use your intellect without your consent? Kinds of sounds like intellectual property."
Still on that. We didn't say that
he makes a
stealing
good
your moms
argument,
wasn't
though.
illegal. Come on.
I mean, I guess depending on the emulation method, it can be a theft of intellectual property because is it using the actual original code to like that the original bootloader and stuff? Sometimes people write their own bootloaders.
If they just ripped out the entire OS and everything off of the device and emulated that, say in like VMware-esque way, yeah, you stole the boot ROM and whatnot. So, but if you're emulating, I mean, Wine doesn't get slapped by Microsoft. But of course, that's not an emulator.
Wine is not an emulator. Yeah.
Wine is not emulator. Yeah, Windows is not. Yeah, fun stuff.
I don't want any sort of thing jacked into my brain. That's my whole opinion on this.
Yeah,
I want to be able to upload things into my brain because I am done trying to sit through all this material about Azure.
I don't want to do that either because I'm worried about some guy messing up some code somewhere and then like, my eye doesn't work.
Yana said brain NFTs, anyone?
They're just URLs. Come on. Who cares?
I don't know. I feel like this is one of those like we found the way to solve mental illness. It's drilling holes in people's heads. Anytime we drill holes in people's heads, usually the answer is it just doesn't work out.
Later on, we find out that wasn't the best idea. Although there is really good brain surgery that is done by drilling holes in people's heads, by the way. It saves lives. But it's not lobotomies. That's what you're getting at.
Intracranium swelling.
Yeah.
Next topic.
Yes.
Speaking of internet dystopia,
this one is in some ways related to the last. So,
I wish Facebook would pull back their chronological listing again.
Let me share this.
We have another super chat. Denver says that Adam over here talking about piracy with a probably pirated but amazing picture, unless they have consent from Disney. Ooh.
What, you mean Owl House? Come on. Of course he doesn't have consent.
Ooh, does he have express written consent?
No. He's not going to get it.
I'm trying to share this article, but PC Mag, I'm going to show you guys just so you can see how like PC Mag is destroying itself. There we go.
Ads?
Because no. Apparently I had ad blocker enabled. I thought I white flagged it earlier, but I guess I didn't because I'm a horrible person, right? No.
Wait.
Yes, you are.
We have Chuck Huckler saying drilling holes in people's heads is definitely an answer for more people than you'd think, my dudes. I think
you had a different name last time you were here, bud. We recognize you. So anyway, Instagram starts testing chronological feed, which nixes algorithm-driven content. Hold on a second. Sorry. Why? I really need to get a second monitor. Well, ultra wide is just not enough. Basically,
you can read some of my reviews. I got a review on this one and this one, not that one.
So basically, they're testing a chronological feed amid concerns that platform algorithm-driven approach can serve up content that's, quote, bad for teenagers' mental health. But they're not replacing the algorithm-based feed. What they're doing is creating they're going to leave the home feed in place, but then create a second feed called following, which is just a chronological chronological list of posts from people you follow. And then a third feed dubbed favorites, which will serve posts strictly from accounts you've favorited. So the second one basically works the way like Twitter used to work, or every social media used to work, where it's just a list of your followers, and the most recent thing that was said is the thing you would hear. The reason why I thought this was interesting is because it specifically addresses the whole mental health thing with social media, which, I mean, I think we all agree at this point that people spend far too much time on social media and make it too big a part of their daily lives and their, I guess, their personalities, like the sort of gratification they get from it, constantly comparing themselves to each other. The reason why I think this flows well with the Neuralink thing is because I think that they're both, social media is the slippery slope to which Neuralink will be the ultimate downfall of society through our constant incessant need to always be connected to one another and comparing ourselves to one another and obviously arguing with one another. I want to get your guys' thoughts on this though.
Can we just simply say that social media is kind of a cesspit to begin with?
Well,
yes,
I'll take that hard stance.
The algorithmic thing that's designed to keep you staring there as long as possible definitely has led to some very warped perceptions of reality for a lot of people.
Right. There's former Google developer who has an advocacy group because he goes around talking about how essentially the way they design their UI, like from the like button on, is just about creating the same reaction in your brain that, you know, pulling the lever of a slot machine does. That same sort of like gratification that you get from seeing those things spin and what the reaction is what you get from seeing how many likes you get and constantly checking that. Also, we're getting some interesting spam in the chat, which
working on it.
I got rid of it.
I put them in timeout. Don't worry.
I just blocked them all together.
They're going to make 3 more accounts as we go on. But yeah, I mean, look, this sort of stuff leads to people looking at influencers and celebrities and instead of the internet being a thing where, you know, you maybe see some posts from artists that you like, but mostly your friends, your family, people that you know, it becomes this thing where all you mostly see is, you know, viral things. And I don't know if you guys remember this, the audience, but there was a time where viral videos were spread by people sending you emails or talking about it at work or at school. And you go look the thing up later instead of it being recommended in your feed and what is, you know, all of this stuff that's driven to sort of keep you sitting there as long as possible. And then people, by consuming this sort of stuff, don't really have a good grasp on reality anymore.
Adam in charge said, "I'd let her steal my intellectual property." Haha.
Who's the her?
I think he's referring to the spam bot in the chat that was posting naughty things.
Chuck also gave an answer to why he changed his name, which is he changed it because Louis Rossmann refused to say it in public. Makes sense.
I would have just did what Alex did, which was censor your name by using the proper version of it.
What was it, Richard?
Richard, yes. But glad to see you're also an avid viewer of Louis Rossmann. I like that guy.
Yeah, he's got some good stuff. Definitely a good advocate for, you know, DIY fixing, you know.
The right to repair is a big deal. As much as we want to pretend it's not, it's a really big deal.
And I guess with that, we'll move on to the Q&A portion. I mean,
we dare.
We dare. I have some questions from one of our Patreon users. But before I get into that, I just want to say thank you to anybody who is subscribing to us on Patreon. I think that's what it's called, or supporting us on Patreon. And if you'd like to do that, if you aren't already, you can check us out at patreon.com/adoredtech. Link is also in the description. If you're too lazy to type, I guess.
You can have your questions read out here.
You can also harass me or Donnie throughout most of the day, and we'll probably respond.
because you get access to the Discord,
which is a really nice place with a lot of chill people. Please, if you come here, don't scare anybody.
And you better be chill too, because if you break the rules, the mods will get you.
I mean, most people aren't that rough, though.
So the first question I have is from Tara, one of our Patreon supporters who's in our Discord. That's also one thing you get from subscribing to us on Patreon, is access to our Adored TV Discord. So she said, what do the old fabs for higher nanometer process actually manufacture? Can the 32 nanometer ones, for example, be used for new design of the CPUs? That's a interesting framing of that question. But I guess what she's asking is, because there are so many manufacturing facilities that use much older, larger process nodes, and what are they used for, and can they be used for manufacturing like newer current CPUs? Mostly what they're used for is things that you wouldn't expect them to be, like there to be an actual IC in. Like there is a lot of silicon in places you wouldn't expect. Like I think I saw there was some sort of integrated circuit in a, what you call it, like a toothbrush that was much more powerful than it needed to be just to, I guess, run the charging system. And then there are lots of other examples of that. And mostly it's for weird things like that. But some really important applications can use older manufacturing processes where bleeding edge nodes are not as important because you don't need the same efficiency in terms of die space or power.
I mean, does a microwave really need to be using, 10 nanometer or 14 nanometer? Not really.
No, and that's a good example of one of the many things that older process nodes are used for. The CPU in your car, they're actually pretty close to the leading edge on those, by the way. But that's just one example of something that isn't on the bleeding edge. It's probably still back at the 32 nanometer or 16 nanometer kind of range. And Global Foundries themselves, they dropped out of the bleeding edge CPU shrinks and stuff and decided to stick with the older, because there's more than enough demand for chips even at 3-4 generations old of nodes, and they still have the equipment. It's not like they just throw it out.
I mean, there's tons of stuff that is in your car that is probably even older than that doesn't really need to be that advanced in any way.
Following up this question, Chuck Huckler asks, question, do you think that older fabs could be used to augment newer fabs, say by adding older integrated graphics to newer, better CPUs, just to get more working systems out into the market? So no, simply because what you're basically asking is for the graphics card. I mean, the graphics would have to be redesigned from the ground up to fit the new usage, and that would require new masks, and the cost of that would be too high, so it wouldn't make sense.
Let's look at something that is being done, like with EMIB and things like that for Veros and from Intel, where they have a different node for their GPU versus CPU, and they combine it together on a chip. Or look at what AMD has done with their I/O die being at a different nanometer than the CPU. We're doing it now. They're taking advantage of older nodes to improve bandwidth for newer CPUs and using the smaller node sizes where it's immediately impactful.
Yeah, I mean, though, like, again, to address the specifics of that question, though, is it's not something you can just do now to respond to the current market issues, because the kind of development cycle on, having what AMD did with having the I/O die, like say AMD wanted to just make that I/O die also a graphics chiplet, so they can have a 14 nanometer integrated graphics chip paired with, Ryzen whatever CPU, and that way it's something that functions.
Can you imagine having a 28 nanometer, like whatever Hawaii version of AMD GPU was back then, and the 28 nanometer, strap that onto your Ryzen CPU, and now you got a 400-watt socket melter?
Yeah, definitely not as feasible as people think. But though, again, like Kirk said, we're already doing things like that. They're just smarter ways of doing it. But these are things they plan for years ahead of time, not just by responding to market circumstance, on a whim. But
yeah, I mean,
that's
even
just not
the
how
IO die wasn't in the initial Ryzen. They did chiplets, and then they moved to an IO die with chiplets.
Yeah.
So it was still a long time coming for them too.
The guy from Twitch, whose name I cannot pronounce, said, "Don't talk about cars. I should have gotten my new car in September. Who knows when I'll be able to get it." The car shortage is insane. I ended up buying something old off of Craigslist because I couldn't wait any longer.
Well, they've shown pictures of like Ford trucks just packed in the
and they just
parking
don't have
lots from the manufacturer because they don't have chips to put in them. That
and
little integrated everything.
It would be probably in these companies' best interest to figure out some ways to minimize the amount of these that they have, like to a certain
They have been
too.
They've been cutting out some of the chips and going back to more mechanical, just so that they can kick these shells out the door.
Mm-hmm. Because it's eating up so much space. There's a video that I saw on YouTube a little while ago that was talking about Toyota and how they have most of their supply chain within their control and within about 100 miles of them, and how they had the least issue out of these other companies because they tended to depend on themselves or companies that were under the Toyota umbrella, which I thought was interesting.
So Tech We Love said, question, do you guys think that GPUs and other PC components should be treated like utilities since so many businesses depend on them and such should not be price gouged like now in 2022? The basic answer to that I would say is no. But the longer answer I would say is, well, they can't be treated like utilities because it's not, I mean, these are products. It's not like electricity or water or power or internet communication services such. That being said, while there is an argument to be made that semiconductors are a basic life necessity now because they're used everywhere and you need them for daily function, there isn't really an argument to say that the government should be regulating them like utilities. The government already has antitrust laws and anti-monopoly laws which ensure that things aren't necessarily being gouged. I think what you're describing as gouged is more really just market responses to various situations, because what we're facing right now is we had a global pandemic which shut down a lot of supply chains or manufacturing facilities for a while, and then created logistical nightmares in terms of shipping. And then on top of that, you have a big boom in things like cryptocurrency, which created a huge demand for things like graphics cards. But on top of that, you have everyone working from home, which created a higher demand for consumer electronics as a whole. So all of those things is like, how do you really, what do you do to as a government to regulate yourself out of that without ceding the government so much control over intellectual property, distribution, logistics, and just about every other facet of life that you'd be living in a police state, essentially.
I mean, the problem with this too is that we, for some reason, think that the government would be able to do a more efficient job of this,
or they would want to do a better job of it.
I mean, I think if you've been paying attention the past 5 years or so, you could see that the government is really not efficient at doing these sorts of things, and they're already in over their head with the amount of stuff that they have to handle. I don't know. I think that a lot of us are just looking to some sort of answer to make things easier, but everything is incredibly expensive right now. I went into a kitchen supply store the other day, and the owner of the business was telling me that everything year over year has gone up something like 30-40% or something, and the cost his costs have tripled since the start of the pandemic.
So there's a few economic factors at play right now, and maybe Mike can key in on this in the comments, but we have shortfall, which is the expected purchase rate that all of the manufacturers kind of prepared for. And then that keys in with the pandemic because they reduced the amount that they expected people would buy, and so ramped down their production. And it turned on its head, and it had more demand. And so, yeah, they had a shortfall of product. And then we also had shortages, which would be they didn't have the people and the means to manufacture and create the products that they did have on order. And we have inflation, which is, economic policy just gone mad, right? There's any number of things that can contribute to inflation, and pick your poison on why you think personally there's inflation. You're probably right. And then we go to the source materials also going up in price too. So the raw cost of lumber, of metals, and all of that, oil, and then the transportation and logistics, it's all just gone to pot, all a nice big perfect storm. And so you see not just inflation causing prices to go up, but all these other extreme circumstances that are contributing and making it look a lot worse. And not just look, it is.
It's funny because this guy repeated to me the same thing that we've heard at least a dozen times from tech analysts and people who were involved with, that ask questions about the logistical stuff. The guy told me that a shipping container from China costs about $30,000 right now to deliver it. So, I mean, that number of like 22, 25 we've been hearing all year, if you go ahead and use economics of scale, it wouldn't be insane for them to be paying about 25 if they're shipping a ton of different stuff at once. So, I mean, that's, again, these companies are making profits. They absolutely are. And they absolutely are taking advantage of the market. But the market is allowing them to be taken advantage of. That's also very important to understand.
Nicodemus Stroud said, I just set up my very first Patreon with you guys. Be gentle with me. Well, thanks a lot for doing that. We appreciate the support. And I'll make sure you get an invite to the Discord so you can chat with us on the regularly. Yeah, that's good English. Oh, and we're back.
I already got him.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
You're faster
Looks
than
like
me.
Mike is a specialist in microeconomics instead of macro. Sorry. I didn't know what your exact specialty was. I just knew you were good with this stuff. So
maybe next time we should try to talk to Brian. I've spoken to him a few times on Facebook. He's a very nice guy. He might have some interesting insights on this stuff too.
Brian, I don't know what Brian you guys are talking about. Sorry.
Yes, City.
Tech, yes. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I've watched his stuff. I've never spoken to him though. That would be interesting. Let's see if we have any other questions. Actually, we have another one from the Discord. While I'm, this one is again from Tara, and it is: what are the creators you recommend to watch lately in the tech space? I'll let you guys go first on that.
Adored TV.
I actually watch a fair bit of Tech Yes City. I watch Hardware Unbox mostly, and I've been finding myself watching some Kit Guru and Tech Team GB videos, oddly enough.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. In the tech space, is there anybody I watch that is good, but maybe you guys don't already know about them? Like, I mean, obviously I watch Hardware Unboxed, but I think everyone here knows them. I watch Linus Tech Tips, but again, everyone knows them. But a lot of the like more, you know, less known content creators I watch are not really in the tech space.
Absolutely.
So it's hard for me to give a good shout out there. I mean, Louis Rossman is great. So if you haven't already checked out his content, like you should. But I don't know. I can't think of anybody else. Honestly, I think the whole. Oh, you know what? Actually, I do have one I like. Random Gaming in HD. He's a British kid that always tests really old graphics cards and stuff. His content is a lot of fun, and he broaches subjects that a lot of people just ignore, like how good is the GT 730 or whatever it's called in today's world. So check out him.
Yeah, I mean the content that I usually watch is either gaming related or like some guy doing home improvement stuff. You know, I don't know why. It's just very calming to watch somebody like do woodworking or something.
I went through my home improvement phase.
Or cooking. I watch a lot of cooking videos. It's very fun to cook.
I watch a lot of like movie and film review stuff. That's because you can't read a Rotten Tomatoes review and get something that isn't just bullshit, basically. So,
did we want to pull back Chuck's question before it gets too far on the scroll about iGPUs?
Yeah.
So,
go ahead.
Do you think that Ryzen not including some small GPU on all of its products was a mistake, albeit maybe not from a profit standpoint? If anyone's watched these streams, you know my opinion on this, and my opinion is yes, it was a mistake. Yeah, I've always been like, oh, if this Ryzen CPU had just put even a 3-core.
I guess I'll get a little bit deeper in the weeds on that. I agree that it would be beneficial to the market, and it would be beneficial to AMD as a whole, actually, because they'd be even more competitive with Intel in, let's say, off the office space and certain things where, volume CPU sales are had, but they don't necessarily need discrete GPUs. But I think that if AMD could easily do that and still have the whole approach that they have to Zen, which is having a chiplet-based system, they would have done it. I think that they will do it in the future. It's just a matter of how they tackle it. They're iterating every major generation with Ryzen, and I think the next step is for basically everything to be an APU. But the way they're going to probably tackle that is by having a separate graphics die that they can add to the package. Because what they don't want to do is have graphics is be selling monolithic chips like they do in mobile widely on the desktop space, because that would basically hamper a lot of the flexibility they have with Zen as it is. When you buy a 5700G, you're buying the exact same chip that they use for the mobile lineup as well, just with different clock speeds or whatever. And that's a monolithic die. And the reason why they stay monolithic in mobile is simply because mobile requires really low idle power, which you cannot do right now with chiplets. So if you still have to make monolithic to address the mobile space, then you can also use that in your lineup for having APUs in the desktop space. But hopefully in the future, they'll be able to address both, where they can have chiplets on mobile and chiplet-based APUs on the desktop.
Well, Janos kind of gives up the game here on the issue. Can the iGPU go on the IO die?
I'd imagine that's probably where they're going, but they're probably also going to be doing something with some sort of infinity cache, whether it's 3D stacked or integrated into the die or whatnot, so that they can address whatever latency or memory bandwidth concerns they might have with that.
Yeah, this is more or less an issue of them being able to do this without causing too many issues with everything with the CPU architecture itself, I guess.
Well, and they also have to do it to a level that it's performant enough, because pretty much everything is using the GPU nowadays, from the transparent windows in Windows 10 to the desktop drawing and all of that. all of the videos you watch do some kind of H.264, H.265 acceleration through a GPU, or hopefully at least in the CPU. And if they undersize the amount of CUs or CUDA cores or whatever that they dedicate, you're going to have a bad experience, even if you got a really good 5900X.
Chuck Huckler, man, if I had literally anything, I'd be happy. I'm running 5 monitors, and I'll need a second GPU if I need more. If I had an iGPU, I could at least use the ports on my motherboard. One other alternative to that is to use like a Type-C based monitor. A lot of new monitors do have a Type-C as a connection point. It's not the greatest thing ever. I'm not saying it is, but like if it's the 6th monitor that you have, then I think it's going to be fine.
Yeah, I mean
30 frames per second.
I mean, so I think some of this really depends on just what your use case is and what you need it for. But I mean, I imagine when you get to the 6 monitor, it's not so much you need 4K at 140 FPS. It's more like you need display out in order to look at some sheets or graphs or something.
Well,
I've used some USB monitor based stuff, and the refresh rate is terrible. And when you scroll, you can see it's just struggling.
Mm-hmm.
Even
the refresh is terrible.
Aren't there? But I've seen portable monitors that are like 15 inches or whatever that have, they're 60 hertz, 1080p or whatever, but they also have, in addition to having an HDMI out, they also can use DisplayPort, and I think it just uses like not DisplayPort, it uses Type-C, but I believe it just does DisplayPort over Type-C somehow. So I'm not really sure if it's 30 hertz then. But I haven't used them myself, but I think you can still do 60 hertz in those ones.
So yeah, I mean, the other thing that I guess doesn't really get thought about a lot is if you have a pretty feature-packed board, motherboard manufacturers kind of get irritated with the fact that they need to have so many display outs. That's why sometimes you'll see just one HDMI out just to sort of, be a display out.
But if you're not going to be using a 5700G in it.
Yeah. I mean, look, I have I don't know if it's the Asus or the MSI board that I have. It's one of the top X570 boards. Doesn't even have display out. It's not even on the board. They don't want you to use display out. They have too many other things on there. There's so many USB ports. There's the extra LAN port. There's all this other sort of stuff. So
am I the only one that misses the iFinity display cards, the 7990 and such, that had 6 micro PC or display ports on the back, or micro ports, HDMI?
Yeah. Those were really cool. I think VisionTech, I think, is one of the only companies I know that still does stuff like that, but they're not really making newer graphics cards. They specifically still make older ones to do that, though.
Do you know the biggest thing that pissed me off about the 30 series, besides not being available? That most of the cards only had 4 video ports on them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. My specific use case needed 2 HDMI, and I ended up having to do display port HDMI adapter, which I hate doing. But fortunately, DisplayPort does support HDMI, so it's neither here nor there. But
I have this question from Adam in Charge, which is, why don't computers have transmissions?
They spread viruses, so they definitely transmit.
I don't know why you thought that was worth bringing up.
Nicodemus also asked the question, do you think iGPUs could ever offset this GPU insanity in regards to performance?
Yes.
No. There's a reason why discrete graphics cards have the PCIe power plugs on them in 2, 3, 4 connections.
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on what you mean by offset, because like obviously they're never going to be able to tackle the high end, but I do think we're already getting to the point where integrated graphics is replacing the absolute low end of discrete cards. Like, the GT 1030s of the world, and even up to something like a GTX 1050 maybe. I think you're getting really close to that level of performance with something like a 5600G, and so then there probably will be a world where they no longer produce those kind of discrete cards because it doesn't really make sense to, and then they can focus more resources on only outputting cards that actually can exceed the performance level you can get with an APU. I also think the performance
level
to
all the 730s that are being sold at $200 right now.
Again, that's the world we live in now. We're talking about, into the future. And then
I think there'll always be a place for something like a 1030 or a 710 or something that'll be used as like a backup video or on things that just don't have video.
Or to power display numbers 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah. I think those things will always exist. I just don't think people will be buying them for gaming.
But they will probably be a lot more niche, though, and not as widely produced.
The reason why they seem so ubiquitous is because there's high margin stuff and they just sit on shelves, so they don't. That's why they're in every Best Buy. But yeah, Denver said the 5700G works pretty well with DDR4 4933 CL17, but I suspect the 30% faster RDNA 2 with 20% faster clocks would need the DDR5 3600 CL38. Yeah, I could see that. I would see DDR5 being a nice jump in performance for these things.
Well, I also think if AMD starts doing anything involving infinity cache in APUs, that's probably also going to be a nice jump in performance. Denver gave us $2 and said, my 5700G has 2-speed trans, Gear 1 and Gear 2. And some of you understand that reference.
I mean...
Nicodemus Stroud said, I'm surprised iGPUs haven't been configured for crypto. Quote, in time.
They're not strong enough.
The main crypto that's been done on GPUs right now is Ethereum, and that's more about, it is heavily to do with memory bandwidth, which you're just not going to get with something that's using DDR4 system memory. So, yeah. It's just not.
That's how they tried to make it ASIC resistant, is by taxing memory bandwidth. And the only way you can defeat that is by throwing more RAM at it.
Which, by the way, is the reason why I think the Radeon 7 is still the best graphics card for Ethereum mining.
Because HBM.
It has all of the HBM.
And all of the GPU to manage with that HBM to actually do the little bit that it requires.
It's interesting that AMD first did HBM, which ended up being the best thing for Ethereum mining, and now they have infinity cache GPUs that have low, bus widths, so they're not very good for Ethereum mining. Like, they could still do it, but compared to like the 30 series, they're very bad at it.
Well, there's plenty of other cryptos out there that people mine too, so Ethereum's not the end-all be-all.
Janos says that he has 710s for display to config servers. A lot of people use them for that.
I mean, I think I have a GT 710 that I'm using right now for my Plex server, because even though it's not connected to any displays, it just needs one because it's running a 3600X. So
yeah, and
if I ever
on consumer boards isn't the thing.
If I ever decide to just put an APU in there instead, then I guess that'll solve the problem. But I mean,
well, that's what I did for our video that has a Plex server. It's running an APU mostly to get rid of the extra video card that's in there. But times have changed, and if we were going to do a do-over with a new video, we might pick a Intel GPU, because the iGPU in that with QuickSync can actually kick out transcodes pretty well. The point of the video was more a storage that would do direct stream, so it wouldn't have to transcode a lot. But in the event that it did need a transcode, the CPU would be strong enough to do so without needing to fail over to the graphics.
Yeah, I mean, I do Plex streaming with and whatever time transcoding is done is usually done CPU, because again, the GT 710 is not going to really do a good job with transcoding.
Well, you have to hack the drivers in order to get the NVIDIA GPUs to do more than 2 simultaneous transcodes.
But as I recall correctly, the GT710 doesn't have a modern NVENC encoder, so it's not good at it regardless.
Right. You have
because
to have
it's
something a
Kepler
little
based.
better.
It's not Maxwell. You'd need at least Maxwell.
Like a lot of people use
750
like
Ti.
1060s, 1050 Ti's for that.
Yeah. I originally actually had a GTX 1650 in there, but I gave that I sold it to a friend for $100 because he needed a graphics card in this nightmare of a world. So.
Well, the other big problem was that Plex doesn't use QuickSync in Linux. It only is in Windows servers. So
yeah, my server is Windows based because I was too lazy to do it the other way.
Oh, you didn't want to follow the video? Step by steps. Come on, I did it for you.
My server's been running since before your video was made. Sorry.
Oh.
I've been using Plex servers for a while.
Well, you need an upgrade then.
Probably. But again, that's the lazy thing about it, is I don't want to. It works.
I mean, that's the case for most things that are in people's houses. Yeah, it works. And when it stops working, then I'll fix it. But yeah, I mean, I think we pretty much covered everything. Do we have any more interesting comments that we want to sort of take a look at?
Let's see if I managed to get any more in the... I'm not seeing any in the Discord.
Quick, relying on the chat to throw out another good question.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really have anything I want to add. This is kind of a slow week for news, at least it seemed like for me.
This is
3090 Ti sold out. Yeah.
This is a good time to mention
about
that
the 3090 Ti.
It's a good time to mention that if you're not already, please like and subscribe the stream. And that way you'll know when we have another podcast or video coming out. We do these typically every Sunday night at 9 p.m. This one was done on Monday specifically because the Super Bowl was yesterday and nobody wants to compete with that. Also, I wanted to watch it.
Happy Love Day, V-Day, or whatever politically correct term you want to give it.
I mean,
I don't need to be politically correct.
Hopefully everyone bought flowers for their significant other.
Also, last week we did an earlier stream, which was at I think it was at about 1 or 2 o'clock to try to accommodate for Ian. So if we have guests, we might try to get a stream earlier or later in the day to try to accommodate them.
Yeah, usually if the stream time or day changes, we will notify ahead of time. Usually through a YouTube community post and then possibly on Twitter or something like that. Again, like he said, for Ian, he lived in London, so we needed to adjust the time zones to make sure that he wasn't streaming at 3 a.m.
Or that we weren't. One or the other.
Yeah. I'm trying to...
Our troll is asking if you have a side gig, Alex.
I mean, you know, I sell crack.
My side gig is an actual job.
Do you have a question for me, the guy that discovered AMD vendor locking on Ryzen desktop?
So that was the thing. I think I seen a Louis Rossmann video about this. Is that they OEMs can have
that was
basically
the Lenovo.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can lock the CPU from working on other platforms, or even if it's the same socket.
Right.
Or whatever.
It was a feature set that they touted with the newer chipsets and stuff. So they have it on the server side of things as well, by the way. So
which I can see is probably much more.
Dell or an HP can lock a Milan or I think it was with Milan to their motherboard or their platform. So you have to put their CPUs in their motherboards in order to keep using it.
I think on the surface, this sounds a lot worse than it is. And like people hear that and they think, well, that sounds like really anti-consumer, but I'm assuming they do this probably more for
laptops.
Yes, but also like on the server side, when you're a company that has to provide a warranty for that server, you probably don't want them replacing components themselves, I guess. I mean, then again, you know a lot more about this than I do, and that might be something exactly that you want to be able to do. I don't.
There's two approaches to it. Either you buy the hardware with the intent of upgrading the CPU in the future with a better, greater, newer, whatever. Most of the time, you buy a 2-socket server, you have one socket populated, and you put another CPU in the other socket eventually. That's really the only time you do the upgrades. Otherwise, you're only hosting that server for 3 to 5 years, and you cycle through it, and out it goes. You don't bother cracking the case open and replacing all your CPUs because a half revision came out 6 months after you bought it. It's just not a thing that anyone outside of maybe some extreme fringe cases. So it's not something you'd really run into in a normal day-to-day anyway.
Dan,
I just wanted one more throw on. I bet you it's more to cut down on the aftermarket, meaning when those servers that are 3 to 5 year old get recycled and the recycler goes and harvests the components out of it to resell, then the CPUs can't end up in another system and they kind of short circuit that market. And I think that's more what the intention was.
Gotcha. Denver said, I have not found it on any of my AMD laptops at work, only the desktops. I'm assuming because it's at work, these are probably Radeon Pro systems then? Like they're running the Radeon Pro versions of the processors? I mean, I don't know if that really matters, but I'm just curious.
Mm-hmm.
Not Radeon, I mean Ryzen Pro.
Pro.
Sorry, I don't know why I said Radeon.
Janos asked us a question of, speaking on platforms, do we know anything about X670? Not really. No.
The only thing I know is that it'll have socket AM5, which apparently has LGA style socketing rather than.
Some guesses, like it's going to have PCIe 5. It's going to have DDR5 mostly. It doesn't really. It seems like from what AMD's saying,
they suggested it would be a hybrid.
Okay.
So they'd be able to put boards that have the DDR4 and boards with the DDR5, and the memory controller should be able to handle either.
Mm-hmm.
So comparable to what Intel's doing with Alder Lake then right now?
From what I understand.
Okay.
I don't have any inside knowledge or anything like that, so just
this is
basically don't quote me on it for specs. Yeah. Put my feet to the fire like with Jim. Don't do that.
I mean, I would hope that they do provide backwards support for DDR4 and don't just say DDR5 only. Although there's the possibility that by the time it comes out, that might not be as important. Although, if they're saying by 2022, which I guess we should say the end of this year, then I don't think all of the different issues with DDR5 are going to be addressed that soon. And what I mean by issues, I mean is pricing and the fact that performance isn't, much better, if better at all.
It depends on what they mean by 2022. They could really mean that, it gets a paper launch, 3 days after Christmas.
Which is more or less what I'm expecting. I'm expecting a very soft launch comparable to what Ryzen 5000 was at the end of 2020, where, yes, it launched, but you couldn't really buy it at any real volume.
Yano says that the rumor has it AM5 is only DDR5. That's what I've mostly heard.
I mean, I've definitely heard them say that it will definitely support PCIe 5, definitely support DDR5, and then also support. There was another 5 because it was like all the 5s was in
USB 5.
Maybe it was it was AM5
5.214
PCIe 5 DDR5. So yeah, they haven't specifically said whether or not it will support DDR4, but they definitely said it will support DDR5.
Yeah, if anyone remembers the 1700X and things like that, early adopters, they did get some nice stuff, but the second gen was where it was at. So if you aren't itching for a new platform, you don't have to buy it. Just
wait a year
wait
before
for it
buying
to come
any
through.
Yeah, I mean, see, it is easy to be confused because, this will be called 7th generation Ryzen desktop, right? But it is the 1st generation of the AM5 platform. So more than likely, unless you're willing to deal with those growing pains, you don't want to be on the 1st generation of anything. That being said, probably a lot of you were 1st generation Ryzen. I think I had a 1st generation Ryzen platform as well.
I got mine
first,
pre-launch to
second,
review it.
third.
It was a let me look into the camera. It was a very, very awkward experience. Most of the time, the first 3 months. If you did not have Samsung BDI, it was not fun.
I had a Ryzen 5 1600 on, which was supplied to me by AMD, by the way, along with an Asus Crosshair 6, which was a great motherboard for what it was. And then I upgraded to a Ryzen 2700, also supplied by AMD.
You have a 5900X now, right?
Yes, not supplied by AMD. I had to buy that one. But they did give me a 3900X, so I guess
I had to buy all of my CPUs this generation.
In response to Chuck, he's like, "What do you think about decreasing the number of USB ports on any device, but increasing bandwidth and using dongles as needed for everything, Apple style?" I wholeheartedly say no. I have a USB hub on my computer. I have an add-in card with extra USB, and I'm using every port on the back plus the front of my PC, and I still am almost out of ports.
I like having a lot of USB ports.
I like that the chat has turned into a some sort of IC support chat because somebody
Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. Yes, it should. So, do you think that all motherboards should come with built-in Wi-Fi and Bluetooth? A high-end PCIe card is like $50, but they can be made much cheaper with less features. The one that I put in my son's computer is a $38 card. It has an Intel and it's Wi-Fi 6E. So they can be had for less than 50 unless if you're in Europe. But go ahead.
I guess to address the question whether or not all motherboards should include them, no. While I think it's a great feature, at the end of the day, if you don't need that feature, you shouldn't have to pay for it. And that's a chip that they have to put on the motherboard to include. So that raises the price. And I think everybody here likes having entry-level motherboards that cost under $100. If you keep adding features that aren't necessary to you, then that raises the floor.
If you look at your motherboards that have Wi-Fi built into them, they're not built in. They're a little M2 card.
It's on the top.
Yeah, just look under the shroud. It's a little card that's just slotted into a little PCI 1X, and they have the antennas attached to it. It's removable, upgradable. It's kind of nice in that way, but it's not built onto the motherboard. And they have usually 2 motherboards, the exact same, just with the little Wi-Fi AX or whatever card on it with the antenna that comes with the board, and they charge an extra $20.
ASRock, Asus, Gigabyte.
Now,
yeah,
a lot of
Legend.
The more high-end and premium boards like already seem to have Wi-Fi, Bluetooth as a standard. Like if you're buying a nice motherboard, you're probably going to get it anyway. Yeah, but again, for those who are on a tight budget, I'd rather they have the option of not having to pay for something they're not going to use.
But that being said, Bluetooth on your computer nowadays is a very beneficial thing. I mean, my headset is Bluetooth capable if it didn't have a base station already.
I think everyone has experienced this. Bluetooth on your desktop kind of sucks. And it's probably related to interference or something, but like Bluetooth on laptops works fine. You use a Bluetooth device with a desktop computer, and it's like it works kind of. I have a Bluetooth controller for my HTPC, and it's not a good time. Sometimes it just disconnects for no reason.
I can't connect my Bluetooth speakers.
You have to have one of the antennas that go out, and you can place it somewhere in a clear line of sight. A lot of people, their antennas are on the back side of their PC, back by the metal shroud, and being blocked by everything. And so
I know
it's going to be a bad
Bluetooth.
experience.
I know for sure the Bluetooth and Wi-Fi cards are the same card. That's right.
Yes.
The antenna that is used for the Wi-Fi also is used for Bluetooth?
They're on different bands, I believe. So they do use the same antenna, or at least it's in there. But
yeah, it's in there. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Does Bluetooth use the 5 gigahertz band? Chat?
I don't think so.
Anyone want to Google it real quick? But yeah, I specifically with my son's computer got a card that had the antenna with a lead on it so that I could stick it up on top of the computer or whatever and get a better signal with it rather than the antennas that are just hanging off the back and being blocked by the IO ports and stuff.
I would say
it's
it would
something
be nice.
You just think about.
It would be nice if at least the cheaper motherboards still had that little M2 special slot for.
Some of them do.
So you could still add that in later if you want to.
Right. If you get a still legend, it might be hidden under the shroud.
There's a couple of boards that I've seen this with. Asus's Strix boards, some of the tough boards have this. It's literally just like a $5-10 more premium for the board with or without the Wi-Fi. It's the same board. It's just one has Wi-Fi and one doesn't. Yeah,
they just put the little card in it and threw the antenna package in and you're done.
And if you don't want it,
you change the IO.
The IO ports.
Yeah,
I mean,
maybe.
Again, people might take this as a you need this to be this way. You need that. There are a ton of motherboard options that, if you were just looking for a certain spec list and you don't care about overclocking or the other sort of stuff, you will find exactly what you want.
Yeah. Linus made this point when he was talking on a recent WAN show. He was talking to somebody from Asus, and they showed him all these different motherboards, and he was laughing at them, saying, and this was a few years ago before RGB was on everything, and he was saying, like, most of these are not going to sell. Like, just make this one 3 times in like 3 different colors. That way, people, because that's what people buy, is they buy a motherboard based on what color it is or whatever at the time. And they said, no, you're wrong. We have data that shows that the $3 difference in price can lose us the sale. So we make one at every single price point to make sure that there's an option for everyone. And it's true. I mean, PC DIY is very price focused. What other industry is that price focused where there's something like that, where
I've had friends who
$3 can change everything.
I've had friends that would not buy a motherboard because it had Wi-Fi and they didn't want Wi-Fi, or it had USB ports that they didn't want. They didn't need that many USB ports or whatever. Very minor, like things that you probably wouldn't think are important, but these people were. And I think a lot of us want a very specific product when it comes to our motherboard. And the option is there for you to get the specific product that you want. I mean, even to the point where people now are wondering which type of MOSFETs they're using, whether it uses Vishay. I want the Dr. Moss stuff. I don't want that. And then I also want something with 3 PCIe NVMe slots and what do you call it? The metal reinforcements around the graphics card, and I need 8 USB ports.
Nicodemus Stroud said, "Where did you get the name of your channel, Adored TV? Is like the old phone book trick, lowest alphabet first to be seen?" Honestly, the channel was created by the creator of the channel, Jim, who has a huge number of videos on the channel doing technology analysis and whatnot. But originally, I think he did Let's Plays of the games. And to be frank, I don't know why he chose the name Adored TV.
I think he has an origin story back there somewhere, but I don't remember what it is.
Yeah. So, but we, obviously we haven't changed the channel name or whatever. He will probably make content again on the channel at some point. He's having his own personal life stuff going on. But yeah, that's the only answer I've got for you.
It's also important to understand too that some people will not buy devices that have Wi-Fi on them as a standard because either they're worried about Wi-Fi waves or more specifically they have important things in their house that they don't want the interference bothering. That's an example I've seen people do.
You can disable the Wi-Fi if
You can,
have
but
it, but you don't
we
need
just
it.
not think about it. That if you've Ethernetted your home, why would you buy a board with Wi-Fi? Exactly. I have a direct connection right now.
I have an example for you, and it's gonna be a good one, I promise. If you've got a VR headset like an Oculus Quest, and you want to be able to wirelessly connect to your PC with that for playing PC games through the wireless display interface thing they have, if you are using a direct connection to your PC using the PC's Wi-Fi as a quote hotspot, it's much better latency-wise because it's a dedicated access point to it.
You want to know what's a better latency?
A cable, I know. But again, it's a headset, and being able to move about is nice. So that's one use case.
Well, I just got a new VR headset that's wired, so definitely a better choice.
Have you ever tripped?
The Quest 2 can do both. Okay, I've done them both, and they both work pretty well.
Have you ever tripped over a Wi-Fi connection though?
I've never tripped over a Wi-Fi connection.
Depends on how many microwaves make it into your brain.
But I mean, look, you like, we can laugh at this stuff, but there are people who just don't want this, and they're a part of
That reminds me of that. Did you guys see the video of the special Wi-Fi that Linus Tech Tips did? That was like these special quote unquote like cages that are supposed to block the bad Wi-Fi signals or something like that, right? To reduce, whatever health concerns somebody has with Wi-Fi for some reason. But all they were like the things that you would put like reams of paper in, like
just the little baskets, yeah.
Those little baskets, just repurposed to be like to go over the Wi-Fi router. The problem is once you put that over your Wi-Fi router, it's blocking all of the harmful, electromagnetic waves, but it's also blocking the Wi-Fi because it's a Faraday cage.
I was
and it was hilarious.
Just a Faraday cage, which is what you would use when you like don't want this stuff to get out at all.
Yeah, it's what most data centers are wrapped in. For anyone that thinks that you can snoop on the EMF given off by RAM and things like that.
From I'm not going to try to pronounce that name. Min, I guess. I'm just going to use the last name. Wi-Fi is just plain unnecessary cost for me when my PC is next to the router. A bit of cost saving is nice, yes. I mean, that's the thing too. You want this thing to be a standard, but then the cost of motherboards goes up $3, $5, $7. Do people want to deal with that?
Then Denver said, the non-ionizing radiation is more dangerous to stand outside for 5 minutes than a Wi-Fi router. Yes, we know that.
Most people don't understand the difference between non-ionizing. Come on. That's what the fearmongers capitalize on.
My brother-in-law was really worried about giving food to his young daughter coming out of the microwave, which is something people were worried about in the 60s when microwaves first came out, by the way. And I was like, what do you think happens when you put food on the stovetop to heat it up with fire? Like, there's a transference of energy from the fire going into the food. It's using radiation. Everything has radiation. It's just what kind and how is it harmful to you.
Some people think that in their microwave is like a little bit of plutonium.
A little bit of plutonium.
Uranium.
It's not so much that it's going to do anything to you, but it's just a little.
Well, the microwaves in the microwave are tuned to excite water.
Yeah.
Their frequency is tuned to excite water.
It's boiling water inside the food. It's boiling the.
Whether that's 2.4 gigahertz? No, I don't think so. Like Denvera was mentioning, but it's tuned specifically to excite water in your food, and that's what heats your food is essentially excited water and steam.
Well, I just want to, it can excite the water that's in your body too. I think you're 70% water.
Yeah, that's why you don't stick your hand in the microwave.
That's why you don't stick your hand. It's also why the microwave won't go on with the door open, guys. Come on.
And that's why there's a mesh screen in the front so you can see your food. The microwaves can't come out of that screen because of the dot pitch, we'll call it. It traps it.
So yeah, I literally, like, talking to my brother-in-law about this. I went on like I think it was a 30-minute rant about why he was wrong. And do you think it changed his mind at all? And he's not a stupid guy,
So
but people believe.
pull up the comment real quick.
Which one?
I'll let you finish your rant here in a moment, but
oh no, I'm not. I was just saying, like, it's
Denvera was talking about microwave in his kitchen causing his Wi-Fi to drop. This is a very common problem, by the way. And the problem is, well, I'll read the comment. It says, I found out that microwaves use the same 2.4 gigahertz as Wi-Fi when I put my computer in the kitchen and the Wi-Fi stopped working. And it's not because it's 2.4 gigahertz. It is because it blasts a full spectrum of RF radiation that knocks everything off. Your Bluetooth, your 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi, as well as your 2.4 will both drop out because it's just a broad spectrum noise generator. And the whole time the microwave is running, it's going to cause interference. That is why microwaves in an office space are very fun to deal with. Bathrooms, because of the composition of the walls. It's all a pain in the RF butt if you've ever done Wi-Fi surveys in business or at home and whatnot.
That makes sense, because if it was specifically 2.4 gigahertz, then it wouldn't block the 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi you're probably using at this point.
Correct. And it also interferes with your cell phone antennas and things like that. So yeah, it's a broad spectrum.
Think about it like a loudspeaker playing a really loud, like, metal song, right? It doesn't matter what frequency the sounds are on. It's blocking out everything. Like,
I've had phone calls become really staticky or just drop off when there was a microphone in my parents' old place.
Here's another part of it. He says, you're probably right. I just seem to work fine after getting 5 gigahertz. And I bet you it's not getting 5 gigahertz that helped you out, but I bet you it's the technology behind, like, Wi-Fi AC versus N and things like that. Because if you were on 2.4 before, you were probably on N spec or even G, who knows. But with AC, AX, they've come out with a lot of new interference and mitigation technology to help reduce the amount of noise picked up by other adjacent noise generators, such as your neighbor's Wi-Fi or your microwave or other things that might emit RF in your house. They just do better at working around those noises or even receiving the signal through that noise, because the noise floor might have a better ability to suss that out. There's reasons. We'll just call it technology. Newer tech has better tech for a reason, and a lot of it's because they're dealing with these issues that people are having in densely populated areas that have a lot of interference.
That was a very beautifully put point. And on that note, I think we're probably going to call it a stream at that one. Thanks, guys. What's that?
He's like, I love this AX technology. Yes, it is very nice. Check out the Ubiquity video I did. It deals with some Ubiquity antennas that have AX. So ODFMA and all that fun stuff. Or no, it was the Ingenious Wi-Fi device that I reviewed. Check that one out. I talk a little bit about Wi-Fi in that one.
Huckler said, question, say you lived in an apartment, would you be interested in something like an apartment-wide network share, say with movies or games available to tenants? That sounds like a security nightmare.
It would be. Just have a Plex server that you share out to them or something. Or just do what most apartments do and just get your coax, like Cox or Comcast, provider to give you a group discount on your tenants, and usually they'll block you from being able to do anything else, of course, because monopolies.
I know for myself, I'm just turning off 5G, and I'm just putting some tinfoil in my windows. I think that's my plan moving forward.
My cell phone provider forces me to upgrade my plan if I want 5G. So I'm giving that a big nope.
My phone has it, and honestly, I turn it off half the time just because the battery life on it is questionable with it on. Might
So
be
far, I have Verizon, and my experience with 5G is that it's not different. like
if I
it's
measure,
faster when you run speed test.
it's really fast if I measure it.
Sometimes. So it depends, because like, are we talking like ultra wideband or sub 6? Because sub 6 like 5G is basically 4G kind of plus, right?
Well, you have Wave and sub 6, the two different types of 5G, and there's only one that's common in the US, and the other one is common outside the US. Yay, CDMA thing again.
Yes. So millimeter wave, our ultra wideband, is the one that gives you really fast speeds, but at short distances to the actual tower. And that one, whenever I've been able to connect to one, on the rarity that it happens, is really fast. It's amazing. But like sub 6, which is the 5G you're probably getting, it doesn't really do anything.
I mean, it is faster than the connection that I've had, but I can't tell the difference. I
think sub 6 is the one that's international, common. And Wave is only US. That's why the Samsung phones for US don't use the Enios CPU in them. Is the Snapdragon's the only one that does both for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just feel like the battery life that I give up for it is not worth the benefit that I get by having slightly faster speeds that I don't notice.
Or, if you have to pay a premium like Kirk said with his provider. Actually, I think our plan, like, while it includes 5G, it probably does cost more than a plan that doesn't, but there's other features that we needed, so it was like a necessity. Although at this point, I really want to switch to something that's much cheaper than Verizon.
Well, if you have a certain cable provider like Comcast, they do have something called Xfinity Mobile. So anyone in the with Comcast in your area,
I do
have
an
option.
I do have Comcast. The problem is I hate them, and I don't want to give them more money than I already do. I want to get rid of Comcast as soon as I can.
I don't even use them for my internet, but I have their cheapest internet plan so that I could have the cell phones, because I pay like $35 a month.
I
for four cells.
What'd you say?
I didn't see the shirt that you're wearing today. What is the shirt that you're wearing?
Can't you see it? It says Dragon Ball Z, and he doesn't care about a Ryzen shirt. You can see that.
I didn't see it this whole time.
This one
AMD on the sleeve. Come on.
I was a CPU reviewer, and they didn't send me one.
I got this as well. They didn't send it to me. See, I went to CES one year for the year that they announced Ryzen first gen, and they had a party for press and to rub shoulders with AMD's PR people.
I didn't get Noctua shirts,
and they were giving out shirts and backpacks, and I still have the backpack. It's somewhere, but the logo has really come off the backpack a lot. Like, it's barely there now. But it has a nice little laptop sleeve that I use to put my laptop has a 4700U in there, so it's pretty interesting.
Thomas is like, this Wi-Fi talk brought me back to tech school.
I might just go in the AMD store and buy one if they still sell them.
I mean, to be fair, I never got sent a Noctua hoodie, and I've reviewed far more Noctua coolers than you.
That's true. It's a really nice hoodie. It's actually a really nice hoodie.
So,
if you guys want, please check our Amazon link and then type in Noctua hoodie on Amazon. You'll find it. Go. We get
sure you get our referral in there, huh?
It's like 3% or something.
There's a link to Amazon in the description that has our referral code in there. Go ham.
Here you go. This is the type of merch I get. If you notice the color is a ruckus. This is
that's for the
Wi-Fi. It's their little mascot dog.
I'm going to dox Alex and tell you that he lives in New Jersey, Mike Brazon.
Don't come to my house. Whoever you are, any of you people, don't come to my house without asking first.
Denver gave us $5 and said, I have a Calix 4G 5G for home internet, non-profit, quote, unlimited hotspot, and are nice. Also, apparently home microwave standard is 2.45 gigahertz, according to SFU. What is
nice.
SFU?
Which is exactly the band that Bluetooth uses.
2.45?
Yeah.
Is there a difference between 2.4 and 2.45? That sounds like a
Besides
revision.
rounding,
Yeah.
The 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi band is actually a spectrum around the 2.4 range.
The spectrum.
And there's 3 main channels that people should be on, and if you're not, shame on you. But those channels are segments of 20 or 40 megahertz around that 2.4 range.
Yes, and I believe the newer standards that are 5 gigahertz use 80, and
they use anywhere from 20, 40, 80, 160.
That's right.
And you can get some that bind 2 of those channels together to even larger numbers, but those are more special. But there's a lot more frequency range to divvy out, and so the 5 gigahertz band has more channels that you can jump around on. But with the 160 megahertz channels, it goes back to 3 channels at that point.
Brian Allen asked if it's the one with the huge strings. Yes, it is. The Noctua with the huge strings. I think it comes in 2 colors besides the brown.
Why would you want anything but the brown, though?
You want the brown. You want the brown. Maybe I'll wear one of the shirts that they sent me next time instead of the hoodie. But people seem to like the hoodie. I don't know. I like hoodies, though. They're very nice to wear in the house.
I can see that. You're wearing one right now.
I paid for this one. That's
good. I'm glad you pay for most of your clothes, at least. Or some of them. I don't know.
Could you imagine I just have like an MSI suit on? Like I go to a wedding, it just says MSI on the back with the dragon.
Alex's life is just corporate endorsement at this point.
I'm a stock car racer. That's what I am. I get out. I'm like, it's like NASCAR, you know?
And this time I'm actually going to end the stream, guys. Thanks for joining us. Please remember to like and subscribe if you like the video.
One correction real quick before we get stopped. They did come and say that 2.45 was the microwave frequency, which it does look like that most microwaves do run at 2.45. So that could very well be why the improvement happened at 5 gigahertz for you.
Somebody's saying that the Noctua, they couldn't find the Noctua hoodie. It should be in the Noctua store.
But speaking of hoodies, we actually have some on our merch store.
Yes,
which I recommend you guys check out if you want to see some of the cool designs we have. We actually have one that is a new version of a popular design we did before, which basically if you're a fan of AMD graphics cards, but you always seem to be waiting on the next one, well, right now you're just waiting on inventory for the current one. So yeah, you can check that out at merch.adored.tech. And with that, if you don't want to buy merch, you can check us out on patreon.com/adoredtech. If you want to help us out, give us a few bucks a month so we can continue the stream and other content we create. And with that, you'll get an invite to our Discord so you can come and chat with us whenever you want. We're usually in there and pretty active. And with that, thanks for joining. Kirk, thanks for being here this week. We appreciate your insight into all things tech. Alex, I'm not going to thank you for being here because you're always here.
I just have one thing I want to add. If you guys, please, we're asking you to donate, subscribe, or buy the merch because I don't want to be in a hot tub. And I don't think you want to see me in a hot tub either.
Alex is going to be selling bathtub water soon enough. But yeah.
Do you use a bidet? If not, why? This guy just keeps coming with the questions. That will get to
the fun part is he asked if not why rather than The
I
reasoning,
will
if you
say
said
that
yes.
that sort of questioning is going to be limited to just
Next time
Patreon
on our
subscribers.
stream, we will answer this question. So stay tuned.
That's a Patreon question. Just so
Yeah,
you know.
if you want the answer, join Patreon. Check out our Discord; it'll be in there. Have a good night, guys.
Hopefully not.